It's 10 a.m. on Capitol Hill, where at any moment lawmakers are expected to hold a third vote for a new Speaker of the House. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan said this morning that he intends to continue to fight for the position. His first two attempts, though, fell short of the 217 votes needed to win the gavel. Moments ago, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries spoke with reporters at the Capitol. Let's listen.
Say to those who believe Democrats are to blame for the situation that we're in, since you all voted with those 8 Republicans to oust McCarthy?
Well, the job of the House Republicans is to elect a speaker who can get to 218 votes and to sustain a speaker at 218 votes. That is the job of the majority. From the very beginning of the Republic, going back to 1789. And by the way, who created Jim Jordan? Who normalized Jim Jordan? Who was about to
But
nominate,
he wouldn't be a candidate if McCarthy wasn't ousted, sir.
Jim Jordan, that's clear.
And are you okay if they were to go ahead and elect a Speaker pro tem, as they did in the early 60s after Speaker Ray Burns, so the House could operate? I mean, that's what you're saying here, that type of option is on the table, and that's something you'd be okay with because of the...
What we're saying is that all options are on the table to get the House back open so we can do the business of the American people.
What other options are there, sir? What other options are there?
Say that again?
Is McHenry the only name that's in that conversation?
No.
Who are the other
Then
names?
what are the other options?
Womack, are there other names? Can we just kind of get into detail?
I think you've got to ask the other side of the aisle who they're willing to put forward.
If you guys if every Democrat went to the floor and they voted for a Republican today, you could probably find a handful of Republicans who would join you organically in that moment. Would you take that step today?
Voted for a Republican to be Speaker of the House?
Yes.
We'd have to have a real conversation about what that would look like.
Is that a challenge because your side, obviously there are some on your side who just have such antipathy for Republicans that they could not potentially do that?
No, let's be clear. Let's be clear. We have said repeatedly for the last 2 weeks that we are ready, willing, and able to find a bipartisan path forward, to enter into a partnership with our Republican colleagues, to reopen the House, to get the business of the American people done, to solve problems for hard-working American taxpayers. We just need some traditional Republicans to join us. Instead of rejecting bipartisanship, they need to stop embracing extremism. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Is there any scenario where you think you could be Speaker? Right now, you have the most votes, sir.
No.
Are you talking to any Republicans to support you?
No.
So as you saw there, Nikole Killion has been closely following the Speaker's race for us and joining us now from Capitol Hill. Nikole, you asked great questions. The whole time, the stuff that you asked, I was thinking he wasn't answering them all, but those were great questions. Just walk us through the process that's playing out over the next hour or so.
Well, as you heard right at the end of there, no, we will not see a Speaker Hakeem Jeffries as much as Democrats would like that option. So that's off the table. But look, you know, as this third round approaches, we will see what we have seen all week, which is that we will hear nominating speeches again, both for Congressman Jordan as well as for Leader Jeffries on the Democratic side. And then we will see members take their roll call vote one by one, assuming they reach a quorum of members, which thus far this week has been 432 members. So again, we will see how this plays out. But right now, if we had to pull out a crystal ball, it suggests that Jim Jordan still doesn't have the votes. As we've discussed the math throughout the course of this week and throughout the course of this year with anything that comes before this body, Republicans still have a very slim majority. So for Jim Jordan to get the gavel, he can only afford to lose about 4 votes. Short of that, he's done. And this week we have seen him lose 20 votes on the first round, 22 votes on the second round. This round, it's simply a matter of how many he could potentially lose.
You know, after Kevin McCarthy lost his job as Speaker, some Republicans were sort of floating the narrative that the fact that he's out is partially because of Democrats, too. Not just some Republicans, a small group of Republicans, but also the Democrats, because they refused to vote to save him. And so you sort of touched on that with Hakeem Jeffries, though he didn't really answer the question. But he kept on saying, you know, we're sort of looking at all options. But the reality of it is the chances of a Democrat, even a handful of Democrats, but even one, voting for a Republican Speaker of the House, that's like not a conversation being had, right?
Well, we thought potentially it could be, when the leader talks about a bipartisan path forward, because he has talked about these informal discussions that have been happening with the other side of the aisle to try to find a path forward here. And while Democrats, as you even heard the leader there say, he kind of wasn't getting into names, Democrats have made clear it's really not about who this person is, but whether they can find someone who could be a consensus choice potentially. But again, that just seems very hard to do in this current environment where there are a lot of trust issues on both sides of the aisle. Republicans are also mad at Democrats because, especially former Speaker McCarthy, because that's ultimately what led to his ouster, which is why I asked the leader that question about whether Democrats bear any blame in this, because while they want to have this bipartisan path forward, one has to wonder, is it really sincere? Is it really genuine if you worked in a bipartisan fashion to oust the former speaker? So, and not saying that they teamed up in any way, but, that's just how the scenario played out. So, again, a lot of difficult issues to be resolved in both parties with respect to this. But, Democrats' position, as you heard the leader say there, is to try to find a bipartisan solution somewhere, if that's still possible.
Right. And while this is happening, everything has sort of ground to a halt on Capitol Hill. Nothing can happen in the House, and so very little can happen in the Senate. I mean, the Senate can move on, but they can't pass anything, because the House needs to kind of work on legislation. How is this impacting some important proposals that are being put forth, like, aid packages for Israel and aid packages for Ukraine?
Yeah, well, that's significant because, look, we know that President Biden has requested more than $100 billion in foreign assistance, not only for Ukraine, not only for Israel, but also to beef up the U.S.-Mexico border, also to provide security assistance for Taiwan, as well as other foreign priorities. And, that is a priority for this Congress. I asked Jim Jordan about that earlier in his press conference this morning, that in the event he is elected Speaker, if this is a package he's willing to move on, if this is a package that he could support, he did say that it is something that would have to be evaluated, and made the point that that is why a Speaker is needed, so they can start considering important packages like these. But I would note in his response, he did talk about the importance of providing assistance to Israel, but he did not mention Ukraine. And as we know, with Republicans, at least in the House, that has been a bit of a wedge issue, with many conservative members saying that they don't want to provide additional funding for Ukraine, or they have questions about assistance and want more of a checks and balance system in place before they agree to any additional aid, that they don't want to continue to write, in their view, these blank checks. So, whether or not he was tipping his hand there as to whether he, thinks those things should be split out, Israel and Ukraine, or willing to consider it together, remains to be seen, although there are some Republican members who have suggested that Jordan has provided some assurances that he would be willing to consider a package if those two things, Israel and Ukraine, were linked.
All right, Nikole, I know we'll be checking in with you as things get underway there. So thank you so much.